My boyfriend lost his memory. Well, not entirely, he has selective amnesia. He remembers everything, everything except me. Because of his insatiable appetite, my boyfriend ended up in the hospital getting his stomach pumped. When he came out of the ER, his face was pale but still ridiculously handsome. I fought the urge to punch him and instead asked the doctor in the sweetest tone I could muster, "Is he going to be okay?" The doctor reassured me, "No serious issues. Just keep him under observation for a while, and he can go home." The doctor lied. He seemed perfectly fine when he got home, but by the next day, he'd lost his memory. Which is why, at this very moment, I'm clinging to him like an octopus, while he stares at me in utter panic. "Who are you? And why are you in my bed?" "Oh, playing the role-play game already, huh?" I teased, tracing circles on his firm chest with my finger. Sure, he's a foodie, but he's obsessive about his physique, biceps, abs, the whole chiseled package, complete with those glorious V-lines. I mean, let's be real, the reason I agreed to date him in the first place was his killer looks and undeniable charm. But as we got closer, I discovered that his body was a jackpot bonus I hadn't expected. It felt like winning the lottery, like a $5 million windfall. He's the full package, gorgeous, talented, with a body sculpted by the gods. If only he didn't have one fatal flaw, his love of food. He'd fly to another country just to satisfy a craving, the kind of impulsive, jet-setting foodie adventure only someone with deep pockets could pull off. "Hands off," he barked, grabbing my wrist. "Huh? Since when are you shy about me getting handsy?" I leaned closer, but he dodged and grabbed his phone. "Hello? I'd like to report an intruder. Female, mid-20s, long wavy hair. She broke into my house. My address is..." I watched him coolly from the side, amused by the scene. "Oh, so this is a game now? Cute. Let's see how long you can keep this up." After he hung up the call, he glanced at me still sitting on the bed and raised an imperious brow. "The police will be here any minute. You'd better confess everything you've done." "Oh, so he wants to play, huh?" I slid off the bed, barefoot, and walked up to him. Standing on my tiptoes, I leaned in close. "You weren't this cold when we were in bed together. What's wrong? Put your pants on, and suddenly you don't recognize me?" His eyes flicked to my gaze, which was fixed shamelessly on his chest. Flustered, he hurriedly buttoned up his shirt, glaring at me like I'd committed a mortal offense. You perverted woman. What are you looking at?" I sighed, exasperated. Before I could retort, the doorbell rang. He shot me a sharp look and went to answer it. The door swung open to reveal 2 police officers standing there. "Did you call the police?" "Please provide your ID," one of them said. My boyfriend, Evan, as much as I hated admitting it in that moment, produced his ID with an air of righteous indignation and pointed in my direction. "She's the one. I have no idea who she is or where she came from. Thanks for coming." What the actual hell? Was he serious right now? What grudge could he possibly have against me? Was this about that one time he ate something sketchy, and I smacked him on the head while dragging him to the hospital? That was just to knock some sense into him. Is this guy really holding on to that? Is he even a man? And after everything we've been through, after dating for so long, he calls the cops instead of solving this behind closed doors? "Evan, are you out of your mind? I'm your girlfriend." I protested. "Girlfriend," he snorted, his face full of disbelief. "Don't make me laugh. I've never dated anyone in my life. Last night, I was at a single bros party." Single bros party? That was 3 years ago. This man hasn't just lost his memory, he's clearly fried his brain, too. I tried to explain, but the officers weren't having it. They suggested I explain myself at the station instead. And just like that, Evan ruined my pristine record. My first trip to the police station, all thanks to him. After what felt like an eternity of giving statements, I finally made it back to our house, only to find I couldn't get in. the door wouldn't open. Fuming, I called Evan. He picked up almost immediately. Hello? Who is this? Evan, open the door. It's just an argument, and you've already sent me to the police station. Wasn't that enough? Did you really have to change the lock code? Do you want to be punished tonight? He hung up. This man has a death wish. I kept calling, and he kept hanging up. Over and over again. On the final attempt, just as he was about to disconnect, I snapped, "If you dare hang up on me one more time, I swear I'll sleep outside your door." That got his attention. Evan finally stayed on the line. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. Just listen to me for a second. Are you seriously not joking right now? Miss, who's joking with you? You barged into my house out of nowhere, claiming to be my girlfriend. How do I know you're not some kind of thief? Wait, hold on, how did you get in here? Did you pick the lock? No, that can't be right. My door has a high-end password lock. There's no way an amateur could crack it. He kept rambling, oblivious to the fact that my patience was rapidly wearing thin. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. That's because I'm not just anyone. I'm your girlfriend. Boo. Shut up and listen, I snapped. If you don't believe me, go open your closet. You'll find a whole wardrobe of women's clothes, shoes, and bags. Still skeptical? Fine. Look at the nightstand by the bed, you'll see a framed photo of us at the beach. And if that's not enough, open your laptop and check the screensaver. It's me, isn't it? There was a pause, then his voice came back, much smaller now. You're really my girlfriend? I let out a scoff. What do you think? 10 minutes later, I was sitting on the couch, sipping water from the glass he'd brought me. Evan hovered nearby like a chastened child, looking downright apologetic. I'm serious, he said earnestly. I really don't remember being your boyfriend. I crossed my arms, giving him a skeptical side eye. Then what do you remember? That set him off on a monologue about everything from the name of his childhood dog to the exact date it was neutered. Every detail, clear as day. So, it's selective amnesia. Conveniently, he remembers everything, except me. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze thoughtful. What are you looking at? I asked, feigning indifference while secretly feeling a bit pleased. Even if he'd lost his memories, his instincts clearly hadn't changed. He was still drawn to me. He scratched his head awkwardly. I feel like my taste wouldn't be this bad. My fist tightened, slowly but surely. Realizing his mistake, he quickly backpedaled. What I mean is, you're not really my type. We must have. Shut up. My glare could have cut glass. Say one more word, and I might not be able to stop myself from committing spousal homicide. The words left my mouth before I could stop them, and I felt my cheeks heat up. Technically, we weren't even married yet. Sure, we'd done all the cute, lovey-dovey stuff, kissing, cuddling, the whole works, but we hadn't exactly reached the altar. Then again, just a few days ago, I overheard him looking at engagement rings. I had a pretty good idea where that was heading. The thought softened me, guilt creeping in as I glanced at his bewildered expression. Okay, maybe I've been a bit too harsh on him. Sure, he sent me to the police station and locked me out of the house. But he's lost his memory. For now, I'll just treat him as a temporarily impaired individual with reduced mental faculties. After listening to my heartfelt retelling of our soul-stirring love story, Evan clicked his tongue and smirked. The way you're telling it, it sounds more like some bandit kidnapping an innocent, virtuous man. He gave me a teasing look, his expression one of mock indignation. I shot him a glare. Huh. You must be joking. Who do you think was chasing after whom here? Let's be clear, Evan, it was you pursuing me, not the other way around. He fell silent. For a moment, he just sat there, looking contemplative, as if preparing for a life-altering decision. Then, with all the gravitas of a man walking to the gallows, he took a deep breath and said, "All right. Since I've already slept with you, I have to take responsibility. From this moment on, I'm all in. Help me get my memory back, and we'll face this together. Deal?" Well, with that kind of commitment, why would I need to keep the kitchen knife within arm's reach? I quietly set the knife aside and gave him the warmest, most benevolent smile I could muster. "All right. I'll do whatever you say." Step 1 to restoring his memory. We needed to revisit the place where we officially became a couple. The problem? That place was in the Netherlands. I hesitated. Is there, like, a knockoff flower field around here? Something close enough? We don't really need to fly halfway across the world, do we? Evan snapped his fingers confidently. Got it. 2 hours later, we arrived at a countryside rapeseed field. Watching him dart around the golden flowers like an overexcited husky, I stood there in quiet disbelief. Had his memory loss also unleashed his inner chaos? So, all that calm confidence, mature composure, and gentlemanly grace he'd shown me before, was it all an act? "Evelyn! Come on in," he called out to me, grinning like a kid who'd just discovered a candy store. To be fair, his unrestrained joy in the sunlight was oddly charming. Heart-fluttering, even. Ugh, what a menace. I ground my teeth but stayed rooted to the spot. Seeing I wasn't moving, he sprinted back over to me, grabbed my hand, and tugged me forward. His hands were large and strong, the kind that made you feel securely held. The moment our skin touched, I felt a jolt, like electricity sparking straight through me. Is that all it takes to fall for someone? Just one touch? Apparently, yes. Evan and I ran around the field like idiots for a while before we both stopped, panting. My breath came in short gasps, but Evan's eyes were sparkling, his peach blossom gaze bright and full of mischief. "Evelyn, how did I confess to you back then?" The question sent me back to that day in the tulip fields of the Netherlands. We had just come back from horseback riding, and he was still wearing his equestrian outfit. He looked sharp and elegant, but when he glanced at me, there was a nervousness in his expression that betrayed him. His cheeks were tinged red as he stammered, "Evelyn, everyone thinks you're my girlfriend." I smiled but didn't say anything. He leaned in closer, his eyes narrowing like a cunning fox. "So, why don't we make it official?" The truth was, I had already fallen for him. So, I went along with it. "All right, but if you ever betray me, I'll break your legs." He froze for a second before breaking into a grin. Without warning, he picked me up and spun me around. Now, in movies, those spinning scenes always look romantic. In reality? I nearly threw up. When the memory faded, I decided to conveniently edit out the less glamorous details and gave him an embellished version of the confession. Evan listened, wide-eyed, before frowning. "That's way too cliché. Let's redo it." "Redo what?" I didn't even finish before he leaned in. For a moment, I thought he was about to kiss me. My heart skipped a beat. But then, just as his lips were about to brush mine, he stopped, leaving only a fraction of an inch between us. "Wait a second," he said seriously. "You didn't brush your teeth this morning, did you?" "Seriously? Seriously?" I clenched my jaw. "Oh, forgive me, Your Majesty. Did you give me a chance to freshen up after dragging me to the police station at the crack of dawn?" I barely had time to finish my rant before he interrupted me again, this time by kissing me, deeply, unapologetically. By the time he finally pulled away, I was gasping for air, my brain barely functioning. He smacked his lips, looking ridiculously pleased with himself. "You know, even though I've forgotten you, my body seems to remember. Or wait, maybe I'm just this naturally good at kissing?" I didn't even know how to respond. My emotions were all over the place, anger, embarrassment, confusion, and something else entirely. What the hell was this man doing to me? As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the rapeseed field in golden hues, we sat down together. Evelyn, he said, breaking the silence, I think I just remembered something. I froze. Could it really be that simple? Just one kiss, and the curse, or whatever nonsense this was, had been lifted? What did you remember, sweetheart? I asked, leaning closer, my heart pounding with hope. He glanced around conspiratorially, then leaned in to whisper, I remember, you have a crescent-shaped birthmark on your butt. My eye twitched. I fought to keep my temper under control. Anything else? Seriously, was our entire relationship just about what happened in bed? Didn't we have any meaningful, non-bedroom memories? He shook his head. Not yet. Great. Guess I'll have to teach him everything all over again. There are only 24 hours in a day, and even if I burned myself to ashes, it wouldn't be enough to fully illuminate the dense fog that is Evan's brain. By 10 at night, despite knowing the entirety of our passionate and tragic love story, he still hadn't regained his memory. Fed up, I flopped onto the bed in full surrender, pretending to be dead. Evan emerged from the bathroom freshly showered, hair still damp, and sat on the edge of the bed. His expression was serious. Evelyn, I think there's one way to help me regain my memory faster. I lazily cracked one eye open. And what would that be? He raised an eyebrow, his voice carrying a teasing edge. What do you think? Oh, give me a break. Even without thinking, I knew what he meant. His mind was clearly operating out of the wrong hemisphere. Just as I was gearing up to give him a verbal smackdown, he casually shrugged off his towel, revealing his solid chest, defined abs, perfect V-lines, and impressively toned arms. Well, I'll admit it, I take back every insult I was about to hurl. Maybe, just maybe, physical connection could jog some of those brain cells. I tackled him onto the bed with the ferocity of a bandit claiming her spoils, cackling like a villainess. Evan grinned at me, his eyes playful. Come on, don't hold back just because I'm a delicate flower. What followed was an intense, entirely unsuitable for children workout session. When it was over, I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, trying to catch my breath. Beside me, Evan suddenly shouted, I remember. My heart nearly stopped. Still recovering from the, exertion, his outburst almost sent me straight into cardiac arrest. He rolled over, pinning me beneath him. His eyes had shifted from their usual goofy husky-like gaze to something sharper and more focused, like a border collie with a purpose. His voice dropped to a deep rumble. Evelyn, I remember. You're the love of my life. Wait. Seriously? One night together and he just remembered? Was he playing me? Instead of tearing up with joy, I grabbed a fistful of his thick hair, my voice full of suspicion. Evan, you jerk. Are you messing with me? He yelped dramatically. Ow, ow, ow. I was kidding. Just joking. Let go, or I'll go bald. Figures. Fuming, I kicked him, but he dodged nimbly, grinning like a Cheshire cat. Even if I haven't remembered everything yet, he said with a cheeky wink, I'm pretty sure our bodies are perfectly compatible. I slapped a hand over his mouth before he could finish. MMF. MMF. I let go, and he gave me a look so wide-eyed and innocent that I could only sigh in defeat. Go to sleep. Maybe you'll wake up with your memory fully restored. Later that night, as I drifted off, a deep voice whispered close to my ear, waking me. Evelyn. It was Evan. I waved my hand dismissively in the dark. What now? Go to sleep. Evan grabbed my hand, his grip firm but gentle, and in the dim light, his gaze was intense, almost syrupy, like molasses. I remember now, he said. I blinked, turning on the bedside lamp. It was 11:58 p.m. 2 minutes until midnight. I looked at him warily. What do you remember? His usual clueless demeanor was gone, replaced by a calm and steady voice. Everything. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. Whoa, hold up. Why the sudden shift to being all serious and proper? I wasn't used to this. So, you're telling me, you really have your memory back? I asked, still skeptical. Yeah. He nodded, pulling me into his arms. His voice was warm and soothing. I don't know what happened. I woke up and couldn't remember a thing. Then I dragged you to the police station and locked you out of the house. I'm so sorry, Evelyn. Well, no big deal, really. You remembering now is what matters, I said, exhaling in relief. Maybe it was just some weird after effect of whatever he'd eaten yesterday. He'd been a little crazy for a day, but everything seemed back to normal now. Or so I thought. The next morning, I woke to him shrieking like a groundhog with its tail stepped on. Who are you? What are you doing in my bed? I'm calling the police. I was officially at my wit's end. Before he could go through the whole cycle again, I launched out of bed and smacked the phone out of his hand. It clattered to the ground, and I leaned in, my voice low and menacing. If you so much as think about calling the cops again, I'll break your third leg. His eyes widened in terror. What do you want? He asked, crossing his arms defensively, his expression a mix of fear and outrage. How did you even get in here? I know my lock is top of the line. Normal people can't crack it. Seriously, with the lock again? How much did that thing cost? I rolled my eyes and walked over to the nightstand. Grabbing our photo album, I thrust it under his nose. Look closely. I'm your girlfriend. He took the album and inspected it carefully, flipping through each page. I could see the gears turning in his head, and I knew exactly what was coming. Don't even think about saying it, I warned, raising my fist. If the words, my taste can't be that bad, come out of your mouth, I swear you'll be crawling out of here today. He gulped audibly. Why are you so scary? Oh, the irony. I didn't want to be scary, but this man seemed determined to test the limits of my patience over and over again. Should I just solve this with violence already? Evan and I sat on the couch, attempting to make sense of this bizarre situation. So, you're saying I already lost my memory once yesterday? He asked, looking utterly amazed. I gave him a deadpan look. Why would I lie to you about this? Then suspicion crept into my voice. Evan, are you messing with me? Did you even lose your memory in the first place, or is this all just some elaborate joke? Because honestly, the whole thing was veering into the realm of the supernatural. His expression was pure innocence. Why would I trick you? I don't even know you that well. That did it. Fine, I said through gritted teeth. How about I take you somewhere to jog your memory? Where would we go? He asked, genuinely curious. I shuddered as yesterday's image of him frolicking in the flower fields like an overexcited husky flashed in my mind. Absolutely not. New plan, new location. Sweetheart, I said with strained patience, let's go ride the Ferris wheel. When we first started dating, we had gone on a Ferris wheel ride together. It was there that Evan kissed me for the first time. He had said, couples who kiss on a Ferris wheel will never break up. Now, thinking about it, my cheeks warmed involuntarily. Hey, why are you blushing? Evan waved a hand in front of my face, his wide-eyed, clueless expression making him look like an overgrown puppy. I sighed. Hard. Where was my calm, composed, mature, and charismatic boyfriend? This wasn't amnesia. This was like dealing with a whole new person, one with zero filters and the mental depth of a shallow puddle. Are you sure this is amnesia? I asked, narrowing my eyes. What if it's a split personality, and your secondary persona is just running wild right now? He gave me a look that practically screamed exasperation. What kind of nonsense is that? This is just how I am. This is just how you are. I filed that suspicious comment away for later. Pushing him off to change into proper clothes, I whipped out my phone and called Brian, Evan's closest friend. I needed answers. Brian picked up almost immediately. I'd only met him a couple of times and wasn't particularly close to him, so I kept my tone polite. Hi, Brian. I need to ask you something. Can you give me a completely honest answer? Of course. Spill it. If it's about Evan, don't worry. I'll lay out all his dirty laundry for you. What was Evan like before we started dating? Evan? Brian sounded amused. Oh, he was just kind of goofy. You know, rich kid, spoiled by his parents and sisters, not a bad bone in his body. But no brain either. Pretty carefree, always laughing and bumbling around like a big, happy idiot. I froze. Hello? Evelyn? You still there? I swallowed hard. Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, Brian. That's helpful. After hanging up, I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. Carefree. Spoiled. Happy idiot. This wasn't amnesia. This was who Evan had always been. I leaned back against the cushions, my mind spinning. Based on Brian's explanation, I could finally confirm that Evan wasn't dealing with split personalities, he really did lose his memory. The kicker was, his amnesia had stripped away the facade, revealing his real personality. So all that mature, composed, suave CEO energy he showed when we were together, that was all an act? What was he trying to do? Audition for an Oscar? Wait, something clicked in my memory. There was a conversation we had early on in our relationship. He had asked me, what kind of man do you like? I'd told him I preferred someone refined, mature, and reserved. At the time, I barely knew him, so I didn't think much of it. But now? It was starting to make sense. I'm ready. Evan called out, stepping into the living room. He was dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, his freshly washed hair falling neatly across his forehead. He looked so youthful, like he was 20 instead of 27. I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. How did he manage to look so fresh-faced and well-maintained? For as long as I'd known him, he always wore tailored suits, his hair slicked back in a clean, professional style, exuding that powerful executive vibe. So that was all fake too. I was this close to giving him a standing ovation for his performance. Bravo, Evan. Bravo. Why are you looking at me like that? He asked nervously, swallowing hard. I let out a dry laugh. You'd better keep your distance, or I might not be able to stop myself from killing you. Truthfully, I felt betrayed. Honesty is the foundation of any relationship, right? But Evan had buried his real self under layers of pretense just to match some ideal image. Was that really necessary? So, are we still going to the Ferris wheel? He asked tentatively. We're going. I barked, my voice booming. Even though I was fuming, I'd resigned myself to the fact that, no matter what version of Evan I got, the suave and composed version or this goofy one, I couldn't seem to let him go. At the amusement park, Evan's eyes sparkled like a kid in a candy store. If I didn't know his IQ was 180, I'd seriously suspect he'd been born with a few loose screws. Evelyn, let's try this one first. Wait, what are you? Hey, don't pull me. And that's how I ended up being dragged onto a roller coaster, a carousel, and bumper cars, one after the other. By the end, my body was completely drained, but I couldn't deny it, I had fun. Back when we first started dating, I'd always been careful to match Evan's seemingly serious demeanor. I never let myself be too bold or daring, hiding parts of my true self. Did you have fun? He asked, his tone light and playful. Yeah, I admitted. Wait here, he said suddenly, dashing off before I could respond. A few minutes later, he returned, holding an ice cream cone in one hand and a stick of cotton candy in the other. For you, he said, handing them over. Thanks, I muttered, touched despite myself. No need to thank me. I'd been dying to come to the amusement park forever, but everyone else says I'm childish. Finally, I've got someone to come with me, he said, grinning like an idiot. I choked on my ice cream. So I'm just his designated play buddy now, huh? Let's go ride the Ferris wheel, I already got tickets. Sure, I said, resigned. When we got on the Ferris wheel, the view of the park below was breathtaking. As the wheel turned, my earlier frustration melted away, replaced by a quiet sense of calm. Sitting there, watching the world below, I finally felt at peace. Evan losing his memory wasn't so bad, really. Without the pressure to put on a show, he could just be himself, and I could do the same. We could finally just be happy, no pretense required. If he somehow managed to get his memories back tonight, I already knew what I'd tell him: you don't have to act mature in front of me anymore. I like you the way you are. Why are you staring at me like that? Evan asked, trying to sound calm, but the redness creeping up his ears betrayed him. Oh? Was he blushing? I couldn't resist teasing him. Because you're my boyfriend. Who else am I supposed to look at? Now his face turned beet red, and I could practically see the steam coming out of his ears. You're unbelievable, he muttered, licking his lips nervously. How can you be so bold? I arched a brow. Bold? Oh, Evan, I've done much bolder things. Want me to jog your memory? He froze for a moment, clearly processing the implications of my words. Then his whole face practically caught fire. No. No need, he stammered. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Honestly? I liked this version of Evan. Back when we were dating, he always had everything perfectly planned out. Nothing ever went wrong. But now? He was spontaneous, carefree, wearing his emotions on his sleeve. I didn't have to guess what he was thinking anymore. It was refreshing. When we got off the Ferris wheel, Evan turned to me with a puzzled look. You said I lost my memory, but I only seem to have forgotten you. I remember everyone else. Why is that? How should I know? Don't overthink it. Things will work themselves out. Honestly, you're pretty adorable when you're like this. I reached out and gave his cheek a playful pinch. Don't pinch my face, he grumbled. Then what? Before I could finish, he leaned in and pressed a quick, soft kiss to the corner of my mouth. Then he jumped back like he'd touched a live wire, slapped his hands over his face, and bolted. From somewhere in the distance, I could hear him yelling, "Oh my God, what's wrong with me? Why can't I stop myself from kissing her?" That night, after a long shower, I collapsed into bed, completely drained. The last 2 days had been an emotional roller coaster, and I was ready to pass out. Somewhere in the middle of the night, I was gently shaken awake. I opened my eyes to find Evan lying next to me, his expression unusually serious. Evelyn, did I forget you again? His constant shifts, from silly to serious, from clueless to thoughtful, were giving me whiplash. I could barely keep up anymore. Evelyn, he said again, his voice low and filled with concern, are you mad at me? I sighed, still half asleep. Evan, you being all serious is unsettling. I'm not used to it. He froze, visibly taken aback. I sat up and looked at him, meeting his gaze. I talked to Brian, I said evenly. He told me that your real personality is the one you show when you're amnesiac. So why did you pretend to be someone else around me? His face turned crimson, clearly flustered. Evelyn, I didn't mean to. I cut him off with a reassuring smile. Relax, I'm not upset. I just want you to know that I like the real you. You don't have to pretend to be someone else to win my affection. He looked at me like a wounded puppy, his voice uncertain. But, you said you liked mature, composed men. I chuckled softly. Silly, that was just an excuse. You can't put rules on something like love. It's not a checklist. I reached out and touched his hand. I didn't plan to fall for you, did I? Really? He asked, his voice trembling with hope. Really, I said, nodding. In fact, I think I like you better this way. His eyes lit up with a mix of joy and disbelief, like he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. You're not lying to me, are you? Why would I lie? Evan, I like the real you. I don't want you to suppress yourself or act a certain way for me. And honestly, these past 2 days? They've been the most fun I've had in a long time. The relief on his face was so palpable it was almost comical. Then his grin widened, and for the first time I saw pure, unfiltered happiness in his expression. He was just him. And that was enough. The past 2 days had finally given me a real sense of what being in love could feel like, so free, so effortless. All I had to do was enjoy the moment without overthinking. "Fine," Evan said, his tone full of determination. "I won't pretend anymore." The atmosphere began to heat up, and just as we were about to dive into more intimate territory, I suddenly let out a loud "ah." Evan froze, panic etched across his face. "Evelyn, what the hell? What's wrong with you?" "I just realized," I blurted out, "what if you reset again tomorrow? You better not sleep tonight. Let's stay up and see how things are in the morning. We can play poker all night." Evan's face darkened with the kind of despair only a man interrupted at the worst possible time could feel. He glared at me with the sulkiest expression I'd ever seen. Since two-person poker sounded dull, we decided to watch a horror movie instead. Somewhere in the middle of the movie, though, we both fell asleep. When I woke up, it happened. Again. Evan sat bolt upright, screaming like a groundhog that had just had its burrow destroyed. "Who are you? What are you doing in my bed? Oh, for the love of God." This was it. The final straw. Someone please smite me with lightning already. Why was the universe doing this to me? Cinderella became a princess. Snow White woke up after one kiss. Even the damn frog prince turned back into a man. But me? I'd poured my heart out, confessed everything, kissed the guy, and he was still stuck in Groundhog Day, Amnesia Edition. It wasn't fair. I grabbed a pillow and flung it at his face. "Shut up. Don't even think about calling the cops. I'm your girlfriend. Give me 3 minutes to figure this out." Clearly, something wasn't adding up. Was there something he wasn't telling me? Or was there something I had overlooked? Desperate for answers, I called Brian again. This time, Brian went all out, spilling every detail of Evan's embarrassing past, including how he used to wet the bed when he was 7. But then Brian mentioned something that made me stop cold. When he was in high school, he used to go to the school next door every single day. Rain or shine, he'd be there without fail. "Why?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "I don't know," Brian replied casually. "One day, I got curious and followed him. He was just standing under that big banyan tree with a lemon tea in his hand. He stayed there all afternoon. Someone worth waiting for." My chest tightened. Could it be? Did Evan have a secret crush back then? The thought gnawed at me, and a horrible possibility started to form in my mind. What if I wasn't the real thing, just some kind of replacement for someone he had loved all along? "Brian," I asked carefully, "which schools were these?" Evan went to Northway High School. The school next door was Ridgecrest High School. Ridgecrest High. My breath caught. I went to Ridgecrest High. I spent 3 years at Ridgecrest High, and our school often partnered with the neighboring Northway High for events. If Evan had been lurking around, I should have noticed him, especially with the personality Brian described. Loud, goofy, like a human husky? There's no way someone like that wouldn't have left an impression. But I didn't remember him at all. I needed answers. If Evan had been sneaking around my school every day, holding his lemon tea and pining over some girl, I had to know who it was. The thought of his first love being someone else, the girl he apparently admired so much that he practically set up camp in our school, made my blood boil. My fist slowly clenched. This time, when I got to Evan's place, the door opened without a hitch. He was standing there, looking unusually serious. "I checked everything," he said solemnly. "You're really my girlfriend." I brushed past him without a word and flopped onto the couch. Then, with the calmest, sweetest smile I could manage, I waved him over. "Why are you just standing there? Come here, sit down." He hesitated, visibly unnerved. I don't think I should. You look like you're about to chop me into pieces." "Sit," I said, teeth clenched. Evan darted over and sat down like a scolded schoolboy, sitting up straight with his hands on his knees. Still smiling, I asked, "Evan, you went to Northway High, right?" His eyes widened in surprise. "How'd you know?" I waved a dismissive hand. "Never mind how I know. Just tell me, why were you always coming to our school back then?" At that, Evan fell silent. He fidgeted, rubbing his hands together, avoiding my gaze like a guilty child caught stealing cookies. I felt a pang in my chest. So there was something he wasn't telling me. Taking a deep breath, I swallowed the knot in my throat and forced myself to speak. "Just say it. I promise I won't get mad. Everyone has a past. I won't be jealous." He looked up at me uncertainly. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." Evan took a deep breath, gathering his courage. Then, slowly, he began to explain. He told me that back in high school, he'd run into trouble with some local bullies. Being the rich kid, he'd made himself an easy target. One day, when they cornered him and he realized he couldn't fight his way out, a girl wearing a face mask appeared out of nowhere and beat the bullies to a pulp. She saved him. I froze. Because the girl he was describing? That was me. I still remembered that day. A scrawny boy had been pinned against the wall by a group of punks, and I just happened to pass by. It had been too pathetic to ignore, so I stepped in and sent the bullies running. Oh, right, I should probably mention that my dad is an action actor coach. I stared at Evan, my mind whirling. All this time, he'd been pining after someone he thought was a mystery girl, and that someone was me. Fate really has a twisted sense of humor. I stared intently at Evan, piecing together the situation. At the time, I'd been too focused on playing the hero, and showing off a little, to pay much attention to the boy I rescued. Plus, he'd kept covering his face during the whole ordeal. I had no idea it was him. Evan, meanwhile, watched me nervously, like he was bracing for something. "I didn't mean anything by it," he began, his voice cautious. "I just thought, she helped me out. I wanted to thank her in person. But the problem is, I didn't know her name. I didn't even know what she looked like." I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't know her name, didn't know her face, and yet you still showed up every day to wait for her? That's commendable, I guess." He scratched the back of his head sheepishly. I cleared my throat, clenching my fist for dramatic effect. "So, what if I told you that I was the one who saved you? Would you believe me?" Evan stared at me, silent for a moment, before finally blurting out, "Do you think I'd believe that?" I gave him a slow, deliberate nod. Then I stood up, walked to the entryway, and without a word, raised my leg. With a crash, I kicked the imported metal door, leaving a deep, unmistakable dent. Evan's jaw dropped as he gawked at the damage. I turned back to him, smiling sweetly. "Well? Does this jog your memory?" Evan stood up, his face solemn as he nodded emphatically. But his legs were trembling. Reunions like this were supposed to be emotional, weren't they? Maybe a tearful embrace or some poetic gazing into each other's eyes. Instead, Evan was looking at me like a terrified little rabbit facing down a hungry wolf. "Scared of me?" I teased. He shook his head quickly. No, of course not. I was just, wondering if we get married someday, would you, beat me up if we argued?" What did he take me for? I flashed him a dazzling smile. "Only if you provoke me." He shivered. The next morning, I woke up and found Evan already awake, lying next to me. "You still remember who I am, right?" I asked cautiously. He grinned. "Evelyn." Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. The inexplicable curse was finally broken. I grabbed his ear, tugging hard enough to make him yelp. "Evan, what the hell is wrong with you? If you want to be with me, just be yourself. Why the hell did you feel the need to pretend? I fell for you, not some fake version of you." Evan winced, his voice full of guilt. "But you said you liked mature, composed men. I sighed, letting go of his ear and leaning in closer. You idiot. I like you. The real you. Do you get that? His gaze softened, and then he laughed, sheepishly scratching his head. You know, if I'd known that earlier, I wouldn't have put on an act. Honestly, these last couple of days have been the most fun I've ever had with you. Then, almost hesitantly, he added, actually, this was all Brian's idea. He said I couldn't keep pretending forever, so he suggested I do this to test you. Turns out, not only do I not need to act, but I also found out you were the girl who saved me all those years ago. That's a pretty great bonus. I froze, my smile twitching. A bonus, huh? So you enjoyed playing me for a fool, did you? Before he could answer, I cracked my knuckles ominously. Wait. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, he shouted, scrambling away. I chased him around the room for a bit, but eventually, I couldn't keep up my anger. I started laughing instead. Seriously, what are we even doing with ourselves? Later, I arranged a meeting with Brian. Naturally, I didn't meet him empty-handed, I had my fists ready. But instead of throwing punches, I handed him a limited edition collectible figure he'd been wanting for ages. Thanks for your help, I said, trying to keep my tone civil. Brian waved it off. No problem. I'm just glad you two finally stopped pretending with each other. Honestly, it was exhausting watching Evan try to keep up that act. Yeah, I said, smirking. When we get married, you'll definitely get an invitation. Looking forward to it, he replied with a grin. Here's the thing about being a high-level hunter, sometimes, you have to become the prey to lure in the real prize. I'd suspected Evan's behavior was off for a while now. Teaming up with Brian? That was just my way of giving him the perfect excuse to drop the act and be himself. And honestly? It was worth it. Long after all this chaos, Evan finally realized that his brilliant plan, the one he'd been so proud of, had been completely under my control the whole time. He pouted like a child. Babe, how could you deceive such a kind and innocent man like me? I gave him a sideways glance. Kind and innocent, my ass. Honestly, his acting skills weren't half bad. Was he secretly aiming for an Oscar? Still, I couldn't deny it, Evan was pretty much perfect. Handsome, talented, and with a body straight out of a fitness magazine. If only he didn't have that one fatal flaw, his insatiable love for food. This man would fly to another country just to satisfy a craving. But after letting his true nature shine, Evan's other talent emerged, sweet-talking. His ability to charm me with honeyed words became unparalleled. Eventually, we had a beautiful baby girl. Our daughter, Luna, was adorable, and from the moment she started preschool, it became clear she'd inherited one of her father's most special traits, playing the victim. One day, I got a call from a little boy in her class. Ma'am, he said nervously, I think I made Luna cry today. I just wanted to say sorry. After the call, I turned to Luna. What did he do to you? Did he really bully you? She looked up at me innocently and said, he didn't bully me. I tripped him, and then I cried. He gave me 3 chocolates to make me stop. I was stunned. It was genetic. Luna had inherited Evan's maddening ability to turn the tables. I flopped onto the couch, dramatically clutching a pillow. Why, oh why, did I marry a man who passed on this dog-like cunning to our daughter? Somewhere nearby, Evan was undoubtedly grinning ear to ear.